Okay, we're going to get started. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Mapping for Success Using GIS and Remote Sensing to Inventory and Prioritize Your Brownfields webinar. My name is Sean Vroom, and I am the Director of the New Jersey Brownfields Assistance Center at NJIT. And joining me today as presenters are Mehmet Sisilmas, who is the Senior Global Account Manager with AEC and Environmental and Esri. As well as Amy Ferdinand, who is the Director of Environmental Health and Safety at Montclair State University. Amy is also a licensed drone pilot, which is pretty cool. So before we get started, I just wanted to go over some housekeeping items. Everyone will be muted during the presentation. I'd ask that you please submit your questions via the Q&A pane, and please address them to all so that we can all see the questions. You can submit those questions throughout the course of the webinar, and what we'll do is at the end we will address them. All slides as well as the webinar recording will be made available on the New Jersey Brownfields Assistance Center's website. If you look in the chat window pane, you will see the link to the resources page at our website where you will be able to find the slides and the recording, and I will do my best to get those up by the end of today. So today's webinar is going to include presentations on the New Jersey Brownfields Assistance Center at NJIT, so basically who we are and what we do. And then we're going to go into how GIS and remote sensing are used in brownfields inventory and prioritization. And then we're going to talk a little bit about some case studies as well as available resources to those that are going to pursue this or interested in pursuing this. And then hopefully we will have some time, which I'm assuming we will, to do a Q&A period at the end, and that's where we'll address your questions. So we're going to do our best to keep this to an hour. So some of you may be asking yourself, what is the New Jersey Brownfields Assistance Center and NJIT? And the answer is that we are the first of its kind center that's dedicated to providing brownfield assistance solely to New Jersey's local and county governments as well as nonprofits. And all of the assistance that we provide is absolutely free of charge. And the reason that we're able to provide these services is a grant that we have received from New Jersey Economic Development Authority. So the mission of New Jersey Brownfields Assistance Center is to educate and engage communities around brownfields issues. It's to provide free technical assistance and resources to county and municipal governments and nonprofits that are challenged by former industrial and commercial properties. And lastly, to develop tools, strategies, and resources, create partnerships, and provide subject matter experts to brownfield challenged communities. So the New Jersey Brownfields Assistance Center team is based, we're basically professionals that include planners, engineers, environmental scientists, and social scientists who've helped hundreds of communities throughout the country. Here's how we can help you. And remember that, again, all of our assistance is free. We have a resource center, which includes a website. Growing our website into a user-friendly and useful resource comprised of videos, tools, and other resources is a priority for the center. And of course, today's presentation, again, will be uploaded to the site. We do encourage all of you to check out our Brownfield site often for new additions. We're constantly trying to keep it updated. We also do our best to make it as user-friendly as possible. We are also on Twitter and LinkedIn, so we encourage you to follow us. So a key feature of the center is our Brownfields help desk. You can reach out to us by phone or email. And this is how our personal Brownfields assistance begins. And we tailor that assistance to fit your particular set of needs. So for instance, you might have a quick question, such as when is EPA coming out with their next round of brownfield grants, or you want to know if we have an example of a successful EPA brownfield grant application. Call us or email us with those questions and we will respond. There may be times when your assistance needs aren't as simple as a quick answer. You might not even know what the type of assistance you need is, only that you have a brownfields challenge, and that's okay. Call us anyway, And through the course of a conversation, what we can do is get an understanding of the challenges that you're facing. And then we can either give you, assistance right there on the phone, or we can develop an action plan or the next steps on how we can assist you. The key takeaway here is that we are here to help you. So basically just reach out to us. So the New Jersey Brownfields Assistance Center has created this guide. This is relevant to what we're going to be talking about today. We've created, and this is again located up on our website, as a resource for communities and organizations that are interested in creating an inventory of brownfield sites. And the guide that we've created provides an overview of the steps taken to develop an inventory or brownfields inventory, and sources of data that you would need for an inventory, as well as suggestions on how to use the brownfields inventory once you've completed it. So we don't want to make something that you're not going to use. As there is no standard methodology for creating a brownfields inventory, the guide provides a suggested framework for collecting data, field checking, and compiling the inventory. So some examples of potential brownfield properties include, but it's not limited to, closed schools. It can be former gas stations and auto repair facilities, former dry cleaners, closed factories, vacant warehouses, parking lots, former mills, abandoned railroads, former railroad switching yards, and landfills. So basically, so what is a brownfields inventory? A brownfields inventory is a list of properties that meet the definition of a brownfield, which I'll discuss in the next couple slides. Includes their associated attributes and data such as ownership information, street address, and lot size. A brownfields inventory is a valuable land use planning tool. However, a brownfields inventory needs to be a living document. The inventory should be updated regularly as new site-specific information becomes available. And when properties are redeveloped, when new brownfield properties are identified. So you have to keep this, again, some are going to come off the list, some are going to be added to it. So the document should be utilized for information purposes only, and no way qualifies as due diligence under New Jersey state or federal law. So why do we inventory brownfield sites? There are several good reasons why a brownfield site inventory is useful. The inventory helps define the scope of a community's brownfield issue. It can also serve as the foundation for acquiring resources, as well as the better allocation of available resources to assess and clean up brownfields. Having information about the extent of a brownfields in a community allows for more effective and efficient public policy. A brownfields inventory coupled with information about the contamination or potential contamination at sites can be used by economic development agencies to market properties to businesses and developers seeking to relocate to an area. In addition, it can also serve as a resource for the municipal master plan, a resource during review of planning and zoning requests, and any other local permits and approvals. A tool for making decisions about placement of infrastructure. It can serve as an educational tool for residents to learn more about the community and potential threats to their health and the health of their environment. And it can also serve as a resource when applying for funding, grants and loans, for example, for contamination assessment and cleanup. So before we get into the details of using GIS and remote sensing to conduct brownfields inventory and prioritization, I wanted to discuss why inventorying. Oh, I already covered that. I'm sorry. So you can see here, it basically, from a planning perspective, it shows a comprehensive approach. It helps when pursuing your funding sources, as I mentioned earlier, and it focuses your project goals. So just so we have a good foundation for today's presentation, I also want to go over what a brownfields is and why communities should consider should understand that for inventorying them. So the site definition is any former or current commercial or industrial site. This is, again, New Jersey's, that is currently vacant or underutilized, and on which there has been or there is suspected to have been a discharge of a contaminant. The federal definition is basically the same, worded a little bit differently. It's a brownfield is a property, the expansion, redevelopment, or reuse of which may be complicated by the presence or potential presence of a hazardous substance, pollutant, or contaminant. So again, the definitions are very similar. The federal definition mentions the complications that that precede their existing contamination has on a site's expansion, redevelopment for reuse. Another thing to keep in mind is that although all contaminated sites are considered brownfields, not all brownfields are contaminated. So an example of that would be if you have an active gas station that has a leaking tank, that has a contamination issue, but it's not a brownfield because it is still a viable business. The opposite side of that would be an old auto repair shop. Looking at that, and because of its former use, you would think, yes, this brownfield, this site probably has contamination issues associated with it, but that isn't necessarily the case. However, those perceptions do prohibit it being put into a better use. So with that, what I'm going to do is turn it over to Mehmet, who's going to go into GIS and remote sensing. So let's stop. Okay, Mehmet, you should be able to bring up your slides now.
Let me share my screen. Let me know. Let's switch. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Let me swap the. You see the slideshow, right? Do you see the slideshow?
Yes, I can.
All right, that's great. Thank you. Thanks for the introduction, Sean.
Actually, I'm seeing your notes page. You want to switch screens, Mehmet?
Change that quick.
Nope, we're still seeing your notes page.
Is that, do you see my slides?
I'm seeing your notes page. You need to switch your presentation screen.
Okay. Let's try again. Let me reshare this. Do you see my slides or notes?
Nope. I don't see any.
You don't see anything?
I'm looking. No, I don't see your slides. You're not sharing.
Okay. Notes. Slideshow. All right. How about
There you
now?
go. That's it.
That's good. Thank you. Thanks for the introduction, Sean. And my name is Mehmet Selmas, as Sean explained, and I'm with Esri, Esri's AEC and environmental team. I've been with Esri for 5.5 years, and before that, almost 20 years, I worked in engineering and environment companies. I was involved in environmental projects and GIS projects, including brownfields. I would like to start with the definition of GIS. What is GIS? And this is a classic definition of GIS, and it is a system with spatial location, information, and a user or a specialist. And with GIS technology, you build relationships once and use it many times. So imagine a city or a municipality with so many different layers. In order to do a good assessment, you will need to review certain layers and information. And brownfields could be one of those, but when you review brownfields, you look at other GIS layers and other information for better analysis. From a different perspective, what is GIS? It is a system for managing, sharing, and applying geographical information. It used to be only mapping when I started using GIS, but now it includes advanced analytics, monitoring and reporting, planning and decision-making, customer engagement, and real-time measurements from sensors, beam data, design and engineering data, remote sensing, drone imagery data, maps, and analytics. So it includes more of the technologies. And it's used everywhere in many fields, from natural resources to climate change, environmental assessments to urban development and design. And as part of big data, we talk about big data a lot now, and imagery and remote sensing are enriching GIS in many ways. We used to use imagery as a base map, but we use it for different purposes now. We use imagery and remote sensing in oriented imagery, motion imagery, dynamic image processing, point cloud visualization, artificial intelligence and machine learning, we call it GeoAI, to raster analytics and modeling. So imagery and remote sensing are enriching GIS technology. And a simple process, how data is captured, it starts with site planning, flight planning. Esri's site scan app includes that. And you start with planning your flight, then you use your drones, you collect data, capture data, and with the software we call Site Scan Manager, you capture data and you analyze it. You turn into 2D and 3D products. And then you publish it for easy sharing purposes to either ArcGIS Online, ArcGIS Enterprise, and you can also share data with Autodesk BIM 360. So it is a simple process now. It was not like that before. And let's talk about the field operations and field apps. For Brownfields inventory, there's a phase called fieldwork, field site visits. So field apps enable organizations to do their field work, from coordination in the office, monitoring what's going on in the field, to planning and working with your workforce, where they're going to go and how they're going to go, navigations, and understanding the relationships between what they do in the field, and capturing data in the field with different apps. We have different apps for different purposes. And when we talk about the capturing data, and we have different use cases and apps, fieldwork management, there's an app called Tracker, and you can track your employees and your equipment and vehicles. You can use navigation tools to find out where you want to get to, and workforce, coordinating the workforce, who's going to do what and how. And field data collection also includes geocentric data collection with ArcGIS field maps for collecting, updating data, as well as some specialized data collection, including Survey 123 and Quick Capture apps. And these apps make the field work easy and make the employees efficient. And just to talk about the ArcGIS licensing, if you are part of an organization, you can get licenses from different mechanisms from Esri. So if you are a user, you can get a personal use license at a fraction of the cost. And personal use license allows you to have an ArcGIS desktop and ArcGIS Online and some credits. So you can learn ArcGIS and you can use it for your personal use with that license. If you're part of a nonprofit organization, including an environmental commission, you can also get a license to use for your nonprofit cause and use that technology to help your community. And you can also purchase commercial use license if you're using the technology for commercial projects. I'll share the links with you later. And I'll be sharing some Brownfields inventory use cases from different states, what they did, and a few examples there. This is Renew Michigan, Renew MI project viewer. So they identified a certain number of brownfield sites, and with the dashboard, you can click, and as you see on the right side, you can see the site, and you can go to detail about what the site includes. If you're a developer, if you're a community builder, so you can view it and find the site that you want to redevelop and make a profit there. This is an example from Michigan. Another example is from North Carolina Brownfields. So they did a dashboard with different information and reviewing it and identifying your sites easy. So you can target your areas where you want to do development. Another example from Texas CEQ Brownfields program. And they started this program and expanding. They find the abandoned properties, as you see over here, and turn into an art center in this case. They also did a good story map to visualize. In University of Louisville in Kentucky, they put together a nice Survey 1 to 3 app to nominate a brownfields. They call it Brownfield Land Register Toolkit. So they make it easy for anybody from the municipalities, from the counties, even from citizens to nominate a site. You need to know a little bit about brownfields. So the use of the site, but this one is a comprehensive one with lots of information to be used. And the good thing about this is, like, when you are in front of a property that you think is brownfield, you can click and it will find your address and it will record your location in the app, in Survey 1 to 3 app. As I said, it's comprehensive. It includes lots of information. If you don't know, you just say no, but then if you know some information, if you see drums, if you see tanks, you just enter it there and it will help with the assessments. It's an example, good example. Now I'll be talking about a brownfields inventory that I was involved. I lived in New Jersey, and Garfield is a city in Bergen County, New Jersey, with a population of 30,000 people. It's a small city, but it's a former industrial city. It has lots of industrial properties. And I lived there for 12 years, and I was a member of Environmental Commission. As an environmental engineer and GIS specialist, I volunteered to help putting together brownfields inventory. So what we did simply is we looked at what existing data available for the city of Garfield. Regulated facilities, about 307 regulated facilities. Underground storage tank leaking sites, contamination sites, 65. Known contaminated sites, about 35. Groundwater contamination areas, deed notice areas. We looked at those. We also looked at commercial and industrial zones where we want to target. And as another step, we also obtained vacant, abandoned properties from Brownfield City, from fire, building, public works departments, and overlay them on a map. And the other steps we did is a field visit. We did a windshield survey, just drive, pass by, take photos, and collect data in 3 days, and identified those abandoned and underutilized properties, took photographs, 250 photos. And then after that, we went to the city hall and obtained occupancy current use information for those properties. So from the sites we visited, we looked at 42 properties and reviewed it with the Garfield Texas assessor and fire departments. And we did our data review properties based on their use, occupancy, and contamination information. Screened the sites and identified 15 properties as potential brownfield sites. And on a map, we clipped the parcel boundaries, and then showed on a map with an aerial photo. And this is what we came up with. For the city of Garfield, we identified 15 sites, from a small site to a large site. As you see, number 2 and number 12 is huge. And there are also some smaller sites we identified. And these are like from the paper factories to large industrial complexes, abandoned and waiting for development. So we cataloged about 200 properties, and 4 large brownfield properties were designated as redevelopment zones by Garfield Redevelopment Agency. In other words, our study helped Garfield Redevelopment Agency to identify those sites and put into zoning. And some small properties were developed independently, and other brownfield properties identified for future development. Just to give you an idea, before and after scenario, I mentioned 2 large properties. This was a paper company, paper factory, and it used to be like this, demolished and turned into a residential complex like this here, the recent imagery. And this one was an industrial complex, abandoned property, and demolished and turned into a shopping center, including Walmart. And there's some new technologies available that you can use to view the aerial of the site. This is a site, one of the sites I looked into. So this was not available when I was doing the study. This is called Wayback Imagery from Esri Living Atlas. You see the property here, it was vacant when I did my assessment. So from 2014 to 2022, in 8 years, see how it's changed. So the Wayback Imagery you can use, and you can see what was there. It doesn't go back all the way to 50 years, but it goes back to 10 years. So you can see the development there. And I want to mention also that there's some prioritization models, Brownfield models. And one example is by HR Green. It's an engineering company. And what they did is they put together a model and included environmental risk information, redevelopment potential, including proximity to major transportation corridors, water service, fiber optic networks, and others, and ground truth, visiting the sites. And what they did is they put together this model. It's a three-legged stool model, prioritized parcel assessments, and they incorporated this into GIS. So with this one, unique local criteria is unique to that local government. So they might have already a list of properties for brownfields. So they looked at in each town, each municipality separately, and determine a criteria for that municipality. And the historical leg is done by an environmental scientist and planner, typically looking into the history of the site, how it was used before, and what are the risks, environmental risks for redevelopment. And then GIS prioritization is they use Esri's model builder for processing. And GIS model was used so that they could streamline this effort. And in the lower right, you see the Esri's model builder application. And then one example is a Dubuque, Iowa. And in that city, they reviewed 26,000 parcels and analyzed. And the GIS modeling found environmental risk for 6,400 properties. And then highest scoring parcels concentrated in the downtown area. But as you see here, the colors, the boundaries, as you see here, is the purple, the orange, and blue. Those boundaries, those areas, zones were identified by the city, saying, hey, we want to focus on these areas. And this was incorporated. And then high scoring parcels were selected. As you see on the map, it's colored red. And 62 candidate sites were selected with scoring. And they discussed with the city, and 26 of those sites were selected for further environmental assessments. So as you see in this model, you can, if you already have a certain number of sites in your municipality, in your jurisdiction, you can use GIS technology and make a model, simple model, and incorporate the local government's sites and their criteria, incorporate the risks, historical user information, as well as putting together all of these and selecting those sites for brownfields inventory and assessments. All right, so I'll turn it over to Amy to look into EPA Region 2 and to talk about what she did in New Jersey. Amy, you want to take it over?
Okay, how are you? Right now, we're looking at the areas within the federal EPA. Mehmet talked about the different availabilities of ESRI software. Sean talked about the federal versus the state brownfield inventory process. Next slide. So those are the sites. There are 10 EPA regions. We are in EPA Region 2, which is New York, New Jersey, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. Next slide. So ACRES is the database. The federal EPA has identified maybe 450,000 sites that are potentially brownfields. And of those sites, federal EPA has given grants to certain states to develop their sites, and then that filters down to different groups. I'm actively involved in the Passaic County Brownfield Commission. Next slide. So of the acre sites, out of the 450,000 potential sites across all federal EPA regions, there may be 35,000 sites. They've received grants and they've already started their brownfield inventory. Next slide. This shows in right, those are the brownfields that have been identified by the federal EPA, and they are active in EPA Region 2. Up top will be New Jersey, down the bottom will be Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. That would be New Jersey's acre sites. Next slide. Okay, so how would I take all this data that's been brought into Excel spreadsheets and paper maps and turn that information into actionable information using GIS and remote sensing? Next slide. So we started out with in New Jersey, maybe when Mehmet and I were first doing our research, maybe 20,000 sites that had potential for brownfields. At the time now, there was no lens that it was using to focus on the community. So right now, the brownfield inventory is being changed a bit to show phase 1 of the new brownfield inventory would include only brownfields in opportunity zones within community collaborative initiative municipalities. Phase 2 of the New Jersey brownfield inventory will include all the sites within the community collaborative initiatives. That would be, if you want information on that new work, we'll put those links in the map, in the chat. Next slide. So taking a look at that, this would be the areas in need of development within the communities that New Jersey DEP is identifying as brownfield sites that are purely vetted through DEP and now will be ready to be marketed and cleaned up in the communities that they serve. So maybe there were 20,000 when Mehmet and I were doing our research, down to 14,000 known contaminated sites. There may be 513 now that have been vetted and ready to be addressed in that New Jersey DEP tool. Okay, next slide. And there now environmental justice and overburdened community are the focus and the lens for looking at brownfields in communities that really need to have these buildings and properties addressed. Next slide. All right, so one of the issues that we were looking at would be what I used to call eBay for brownfields, where developers could go in and pick a site with due diligence, purchase it, and redevelopment. That's the site mark inventory. That's been put aside right now. The last time we did any updates to that was 2013. Because now they need to go, it may be a gas station, as Sean said, it may be a dry cleaners that is not in active use, but it's not necessarily a brownfield. So they step back away from that. And now they're looking at the new development tool under the new brownfield lens with the community. Next slide. Okay, so like I said, I'm on the Passaic County Brownfield Commission. If you look to the left, Passaic County is one of the northern counties in New Jersey. We had maybe 776 sites on that site mark and the brownfields initial inventory. But if they're focusing that within the communities that are overburdened, on the map on the right will show the areas in Patterson that they're really focusing in on. So Passaic County Brownfield Commission has several municipalities, but they're really focusing in with the new inventory tool in areas in Patterson. Next slide. Okay, and the thing that most people did not realize or weren't looking at when they were looking at brownfields is that the parcel is the most important. There may be 6 or 7 different databases, the brownfields, site mark, EPA's acres, but it's still down to the parcel. So within New Jersey, you can actually get a parcel at a mod 4, which is your tax assessment list, and bring that into GIS, and then you can really focus in on the community at the parcel level, not the block group, not the community, you're actually down to the level of the parcel. Next slide. And this is a visualization of that. On the left-hand side would be the actual, every parcel that is in Patterson. And on the right would be those parcels that are on the new brownfield inventory. And in the middle will be two sites that are down at the parcel level. You see the blue dots, and I can share that map later. But those are the parcels that have been identified, and they are on acres. They are on the Passaic County Brownfields list. They are also on site mark. So this is one parcel that may be on 4 different databases, and they're not talking to each other. So this GIS will give you an opportunity to bring those down to the parcel level and leverage training, resources, new Biden infrastructure funds to the level of the actual parcel, and then really get them cleaned up. Next slide. Okay, and like Shaw was saying, we do, a lot of the times we were driving around doing windshield surveys, but now I can, if there's a parcel that's owned by a municipality and they can't get into the location, you can actually use near map, which is an aerial, remote sensing, or you can fly a drone there. And with drone cameras, you can actually take a look at, is there oil? Is there a spill? I have a thermal drone that can say, is there a leaking pipe there? Those are areas that you could use remote sensing if you can't gain access to the site. I'm a safety director. I've been doing safety for 40 years, and a lot of times you can't put a person within a fence that's contaminated, or it's overbrush, or there may be other safety factors that you can actually fly a drone in and get some good reconnaissance data from that. Next slide. Okay, this is in Patterson, one of the areas that's being redeveloped. Wasn't necessarily on anybody's brownfield list, but the Hinchcliffe Stadium is now, we've flown drones over there, done reconnaissance over there. In the far bottom is the stadium when it was a Negro baseball field, to the point it had been derelict. In the middle is the active redevelopment right now. And at the bottom right would be what it would look like in the next few years when they actually redevelop the site. Next slide.
All right, thank you, Amy, for sharing your insight from New Jersey and Passaic County. As a summary, using GIS and remote sensing will help you in different areas. One is accessing federal, state, and local GIS resources and databases, as you've seen in Amy's slides, and capturing data in the field electronically, not relying on paper, identifying, categorizing, and prioritizing those brownfield sites with a criteria similar to the one I shared with the HR Green GIS prioritization model. You can use the brownfields inventory that you develop with GIS and pursue funding. You can get grants from EPA or state agencies. And lastly, you can visualize brownfields, where they are, how they are displayed in the meetings, community meetings, and manage redevelopment progress. So you start, as Sean mentioned, it's an ongoing process. Brownfields inventory is a dynamic list. So it could be changing. You can show your progress of redevelopment in brownfields inventory and assessments. Now we want to turn into the Q&A session, question and answer. If you have questions, please feel free to ask.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'll monitor this part, Mehmet. Again, everybody, if you do have questions, I'd ask that you please submit them to the Q&A pane, and then we'll do our best to respond. So the first question I have is, how do I get the licensing information?
Yes, I'll share that information. I'll share the links. So I mentioned the personal use license for personal use purposes. I mentioned the nonprofit license for organizations, nonprofit organizations, including environmental commissions. And I mentioned the commercial use license. I'll share the links for those.
Okay, next question is, can you explain more of how the simple model in GIS prioritized sites?
So as we mentioned, it depends where you live, your town is. If you're in New Jersey, it's different than Michigan. So there's some local versus state level information that you need to consider. So I would say start with existing data. So whatever is available in your state, federal, EPA, state level data, and local information. Start with those. And if there's no specific criteria in your state, in your city, you just make your own, and you just start simple using the resources you have, and do the initial inventory with GIS. I don't know, what do you want to say, Amy, if you want to add?
I would say if you can get an opportunity to download the workflow that's that Sean has available at the center. It would actually walk, what I was using when I was creating the maps, I was actually walking step by step through his workflow. Once you have a property, if it's a gas station, dry cleaners, what would be the next step? Is it in a brownfield community? In New Jersey, they're looking at filtering it through the lens of the community. So by prioritizing a site in a community, find out whether or not I'm quite sure if you reach out to your municipality, the zoning boards, to identify a site. In New Jersey, it has to be nominated to be on the New Jersey DEP Brownfields inventory. It has to be nominated by DEP.
Right.
Okay. Next question this is a good question. Identifying brownfields is crucial for creating healthy communities. However, brownfields can come with a stigma as being labeled as a disadvantaged community. In mapping brownfields and making this information public, have you faced any pushback from communities who may not want their neighborhood or community listed and labeled as a brownfield?
Yeah, I mean, I want to answer, and then let Amy, if you want to chime in there. So in Garfield, the properties we identified were already abandoned, so it looked ugly. So people loved when those properties were developed. So it was not a big impact labeling them. It was already not being used, so they want something useful and generating tax revenue for the municipality. I haven't seen that happening. I don't know if you have seen something different, Amy.
Well, no, just the opposite. A lot of areas, because they were vacant and abandoned, like I said, crime, as they start to gentrify, and that's not necessarily a bad word, but as areas come in, artists come in, they turn into artist laws, and those areas are now cleaned up. The problem that I was seeing was that a lot of times people who are living those disadvantaged areas are there because the property values are low. If they gentrified and the property values go up without some type of intervention, those people will just move to a different location that's still vacant and abandoned property. So getting them cleaned up may be a positive thing, which is why New Jersey now is pivoting to make sure that they are focusing in on overburdened communities, areas that need to be cleaned up, and the people within the community having the first advantages of that cleanup process. So there's very much less of a stigma, but because if you look at Boston Harbor, Baltimore Harbor, if the Passaic River becomes cleaned up, those would be areas that would be prime real estate. You know, there may be vacant abandoned. I go to Top's Diner. If those apartments and those turned into apartments of those abandoned sites next door, that's a win-win for the community. Jobs, training, and a clean environment for the people that are living there.
And interestingly, just to mention, like I was living within a block of a non-contaminated sites, like chemical plant. And then I lived there before I joined Environment Commission, and I got a notification say, hey, there's this going on in your neighborhood. It's a toxic chemicals release and this. I was worried, and I was an environmental engineer, and I went to the city, hey, what can we do? And at that time, they were just forming Environment Commission. I became an Environment Commission member and started working on brownfields.
And, you know, the one thing I would add to that as well is that I know, you know, it's hard. People don't want the stigma. And, you know, typically the people that, you know, want to pursue these kinds of things really are optimists. But I think you have to really look at some of the funding sources and the applications for those funds. And if you look at them, they are always focused on, as Amy mentioned, communities that have basically shared an unfair burden of these kinds of sites. And especially the EPA grants that are available, they're looking for you to paint your community in the most impoverished light possible in order to be eligible for those funds. And those grants are highly competitive. So I know it's a difficult thing to do. And we do a lot of grant reviews here. And one of the problems is, you know, I always get on there. I'm like, listen, I know you want to focus on your successes, but you need to make your community look as impoverished as you possibly can so that you make the cut and get this funding. I mean, at the end of the day, it's going to serve you well if if you can do that and obtain those funds to do that brownfield redevelopment. You know, at least assess the sites and know what you're looking at. Let's see here. I have another question is, as part of Sustainable New Jersey certification process, our municipality would like to create a map which contains brownfields in SiteMart. How should we start?
So can you go back to my SiteMart map?
Oh, the site mark. Yeah.
Okay, SiteMart has not been updated since 2013. There will not be any updates to that for a while because the DEP's focus right now is on this new Brownfields inventory tool. So getting those sites into SiteMart is probably not going to be updated anytime soon. I've got an opportunity to meet with the person at DEP who's heading up the new tool. And that's a question, you know, we can bring up for him. But right now, SiteMart, which is like I used to call eBay for Brownfield, was not necessarily the tool that developers could quite get their hands on to buy a property because it had not been vetted by the community and by DEP. So now the new Brownfields inventory tool, which only has like 513 sites, will be the go-to in the near future.
And I think the other thing too is that, you know, NJDEP also has a list of contaminated sites. It doesn't necessarily mean that all of the sites located on that or included on that list are labeled as brownfields, because like I said, they may still be actively utilized as a gas station or whatever their end use was. But you could start maybe with SiteMart, cross-reference over to the contaminated list site from NJDEP to serve as a foundation. The requirement under Sustainable New Jersey is that you are on one of those DEP lists in their database. So that should be at least enough as an initial step to get your points for a brownfields inventory.
And if you have ArcGIS, all of those sites can be downloaded into ArcGIS Pro or ArcGIS Online if you have the data and mapped and overlaid over the communities, over SiteMart, over the brownfields inventory. They can all be brought into one map and compared that way.
Okay, next question is, if a citizen identifies an abandoned site, can they use the Brownfield Land Register toolkit without a license?
Yeah, the one I mentioned was prepared for Kentucky, not for every state. So it should be available for your state, or it should be used in your state or in your municipality to nominate. So I've given that example as a use case that they developed for that state. But if you live in a town in your state and if you see a contaminated site or property looking like brownfields, so I would maybe start with the municipality, the town, and contact Environment Commission, contact this fire department, building department, and start building the list. Or if you just have one site that you want to nominate, you just start from the city, and then maybe go to state and say, hey, maybe it's already on the list there. That's what I would say.
Okay.
I agree.
Let's see. Somebody's asking about the resources, Mehmet, that you had mentioned. If you
Right.
wrote them in the chat, I wrote back that they will be provided in a follow-up email.
Right.
It seems to be.
I can also copy to the chat if people are interested in there. I can copy the links to the chat.
Okay.
That's helpful.
If you could do that, that'd be great. I have actually, that's the end of the questions, at least that people have submitted, but I do have a question for either Mehmet or Amy. if you're, Amy, you had mentioned, you have drones that can do, have can utilize the remote sensing equipment on them. What, are you allowed to fly a drone over a property that you don't own and without the property owner's permission, or do you have to get that permission before you're allowed to do that?
Right now, the list that we were looking at are the properties that are owned by the municipality, are those that are on the brownfield list. If it's vacant property, open property, and it's not within the airport, there's a lot of regulations for Part 107 license to fly a drone in a particular area. Once it's cleared, yes, you can do that. I'm doing the flights for Passaic County Commission for Patterson. So they have the right to go over the site, just like if they have the right to cut the lock and go into the site.
Okay.
Saying I'm doing reconnaissance based on but I'm not comfortable putting a person in that site to look for it.
Okay.
But if I can break a lock and go in, I can fly a drone over it safely.
And technically those would be sites that are basically derelict, the property owners are unresponsive, or
Correct.
you're not even sure who they are.
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that for people that are thinking about it, and it's also, if you're not allowed to fly, obviously not allowed to fly over without, if the property owner is there and he doesn't give you permission. And I would just say that it's a good idea to be respectful of that, because you don't, especially if you're looking to get property owners on board, if you want to be able to eventually get in there and assess a site, you don't want that relationship to start off contentious, that, he feels you're threatening him with, you're going to fly drones over his property and find out what's going on, and kind of, call up NJDEP and have some kind of fine levied against them.
Exactly. If I'm doing it for search and rescue or doing with police and fire, I'm under their shield to go to show I'm their camera on a site for a different client than I would be under someone looking at the township looking for a brownfield site. That's a safety issue rather than a police fire rescue type mission.
Some more questions have come in. Aware of many points addressed, but practically speaking, how do you use ArcGIS to create a map? I'm not sure that's something you guys, can you say that in 12 words or less? I don't know.
Yeah, I would maybe simply, as I mentioned, if you have parcels layers, New Jersey, it is available. So, and if you know what parcel number is, you just select those parcels if you're making your brownfields inventory. That's one way. The other way is using like addresses, geocoding. So you geocode an address like Google geocoding, and you find the location, and then you select the parcel. So it goes by the parcel ultimately, because you got to know the property boundary, if it's a small property or a large property. So ultimately you got to have the parcel boundary, and finding the site, you can use geocoding to get to the site. If you're taking photos, you use that to show that. And if you have multiple addresses, you can geocode all of them together in ArcGIS Desktop and ArcGIS Pro, and ArcGIS Online too. It's very simple.
And New York and New Jersey are very clear about having open data. So if you go back to a couple of my slides, go back, because the New Jersey Geographic Information Network engine would be your go-to site to right now. If you look to the, okay, any of those, stop any of those. If you look at that map, that is New Jersey's go-to for GIS for sites. That would be, you can download, if you, in the middle of that would be a cloud. That cloud will give you access to the CSV files. It can give you shape files. If you have ArcMap, you can bring those into ArcGIS Pro or ArcGIS Online, and that is your map. It is your reference. It is ready to create a map for you with the overburdened communities. And now you could take that with you in an app like Mehmet was showing you. If you have create field maps, you can actually take that app into the field with that as your base map and start downloading data, and that is your map. And this is authoritative data that's coming from federal EPA, coming from New Jersey DEP. Those are authoritative maps that are georeferenced.
Right, and you use these layers, download them, you use it on your GIS program. Then you also do your site visit with the apps. I mentioned the field maps, survey 123 quick capture, and it records with a location GPS coordinate of the site. So you combine these and then make your inventory.
Because I have students that are using QGIS, but it's still not as robust and easy to manipulate as you would with the GIS. Right now, this was done, if you look at the drones, ESRI has drone to map that will bring every map that I come in, the 250 photos that I take, and will geotag each one of those photos and bring them into the map.
Right.
Great. Okay. Next question is for sites that are for sale, the owner may not own up to contamination. Can we identify issues with these sites?
Yeah, if it is a known contaminated site, there's a case file at New Jersey DEP, if it is a New Jersey or environmental organization of the state. So you can find what is available from the case manager, from the files. The files are available to view, and then you can see what level of contamination is there, and then decide. And as far as I know, in New Jersey, if you redeveloped a contaminated property, you can then turn into commercial use, and you can recoup some of the money you spent from the tax purposes. So you get like 75% of the money you spent on cleanup. When you're generating taxes, you don't pay those up to 75% of the cleanup costs. So there's some incentives there.
And during the process, there's the
okay, I'm
phase
sorry,
one,
Andy.
phase two site assessment that you have to walk through to become an innocent purchaser. There are the levels of due diligence you have to make sure you get a clean site.
Definitely. And the phase one is the initial assessments. You do search the site, search the information. In phase two, if you go to phase two, you take samples and collect data to make sure if you're really serious about it, if you know that there's something there.
Okay. Next question. How accurate or up to date is the data for Puerto Rico? Can anybody answer that? I'm not sure I can.
I'm not sure. The data inventory that we're looking at acres is pretty much what has been put into the database. That's pretty accurate. I'm not sure whether or not Puerto Rico, and a lot of times with the storms and a lot of the hurricanes that have happened down there now, I'm quite sure that inventory has grown by leaps and bounds. There's a lot of places, gas stations, the areas that have been compromised that really need someone down there, boots on the ground, doing some assessments for Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands.
I think that would probably be a better question for the environmental entities down in Puerto Rico to answer where they are at with that type of data. If you're close to an airport, do you need a permit from the FAA to fly a drone?
Oh, yes. You need to have, yes, very much so. There's something called Lance now that you can probably go in and get some work done. But if you like Newark, I was asking Sean the other day, we were threatening to go out and fly the drone. He's close enough to Newark Airport that I need to make sure that I don't pierce that veil or I can't fly at all without a waiver in that area. Yes. Make sure you get a Part 107 licensed pilot because they know the regulations and know where they cannot fly. That's the most important thing, which you can't do.
All right, last question, which will bring us just to the hour here. Do any of us know if there's any information map that consolidates EPA, general, federal, and state information for Puerto Rico?
Yeah. Specific, we need to find out from.
Yeah, I can tell you, like if you're thinking about EnviroFact or EJ Screen, there is information, but I have to tell you, I've looked at it and it is fairly scarce for Puerto Rico, anything in the Caribbean. I don't hold me to that, but that's at least my experience as of recently going through those two databases, which basically kind of, I think, pulls all that various information together. Including demographic information. It's a little spotty. I know they're working to update some of the data related to demographics as it relates to those two programs. But
there's something Hector Rivera put up something that says this is the site for the Puerto Rico inventory. in the chat?
We answered that. In the chat, it said?
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's something in the chat now with the link to, this is the site for the PR.
Oh, here we go. Okay, yes. If you look in the chat, you'll see that's good eye, Amy. The inventory in Puerto Rico, there's a link provided in the chat by Hector Rivera.
I will be on that in a few minutes.
All right, well, that's all of our questions. Do either of Mehmet or Amy, do you have any closing remarks that you would like to add?
No, thank you for this opportunity. Marcellus State University has a educational site license. Mehmet was talking about personal license. I would definitely recommend that. If you want to do your own research, you can get information. Marcellus State has, I see my teaching assistant that's on the Zoom call. We've got students now, and he's teaching GIS remote sensing. We're trying to get students ready to help in the community, to do the remote sensing, to do the GIS mapping. So look at NJIT. I'm quite sure there are colleges around that are students hungry for research opportunities. I've got students that are in the School of Business that are taking information and looking at what the community would look like after. I've got students in sustainability that are working with sustainability local groups that need internships, and they're ready for GIS, ready to do the mapping, and hopeful we can turn out a good product to students that are ready to go.
And from my side, if you are a learner of GIS technology, there's some resources available, free resources, training like MOOCs and conferences coming up in July. And some are virtual, so you don't have to travel and spend any money. So I can share a few links with the group if you're interested in learning. And it all depends if you want to learn it and if you want to spend some time. Tools are available and training is available. And on this last slide, our contact information is there. If you are interested in reaching out to us, feel free. And we're on LinkedIn if you want to connect with us and share your information, and we can share. You can see on LinkedIn.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Mehmet and Amy. Great presentations, great vibrant Q&A. So with that, I will close out the webinar. Thank you all for participating and enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.
Thank you all. Bye.